Welcome to the download and the March edition of our Tech Talks. My name is Bob Foreman, and for those of you that don't know me, I've been working with HPCC Systems and an ECL trainer for a little over 12 years now. It was good to see a lot of names that I recognize sign up for this event, and I know that we're going to have a lot more that are going to watch this post-meeting. So we're looking forward to that very much, to talk about version 9 and the release of HPCC version 9, and primarily today, the new ECL Watch. And I have the privilege to introduce, well, someone I've known for longer than I want to admit, and he's, anytime that he releases a bundle or a piece of software, I know that I'm going to have a rock solid experience with it. He's one of the best developers that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Comes to you all the way from the Emerald Isle. And so I'm going to introduce him to you right now and let him start the presentation. Everyone, say hi to Gordon Smith.
Thank you, Bob. I hope I can live up to that introduction. Thank you very much. I think I've known Bob longer than he's known me, but anyway. So yes, welcome to the March edition of the download. At the end of this month, we are hoping to release version 9 of the HPCC platform. We are slowly on our march to making it a cloud native environment, and a lot of the features that have gone into it are incremental features to that goal. Today we'll be looking at one of the new features that is coming out of Tech Preview and is going gold for version 9, which is the new ECL Watch rewrite. So without any further ado, I'll go through some of these slides. So before I start, I just wanted to go back a bit in time and talk about the very first version of ECL Watch. It came out in the year 2000, roughly. It was based on XSLT transforms from XML. And back then, it was before IE6 and IE5. Sorry, I would appear to be on a timing loop here. I'll see if I can maintain this slideshow. But basically, JavaScript and web technologies were a mess. They were non-compliant with each other. IE did its own thing. Mozilla did its own thing. Chrome didn't even exist. And it was literally the wild, wild west. This is what the ECL Watch looked like back then. They were old school tables. And like I said, it was all just generated using XSLT transforms from an XML base. Then in 2013, the new ECL Watch, what we still call to this day is the new ECL Watch, came out. Things had progressed a bit. ECMA script 5, version 5 was out, and it was providing some standardization across the browsers. IE10 still had its foibles, but was still better than IE9. And we came out with that ECL Watch probably the year after, in around 2014. It's the one that you use today. It's the one that everyone has got used to. And unfortunately, as we're going to find out, it's taught people a lot of bad habits. So now that we're in 2023, we're going to talk about the new ECL Watch version 9. But we can't call it the new ECL Watch. We can't call it the newer ECL Watch. So we're probably just going to be referring to it as version 9, ECL Watch version 9. So if we have any suggestions or bug reports, when opening those tickets, we can refer to it as version 9. It'll help us make sure we're fixing it in the right environment. Version 9 actually started development back in version 7. To make sure that the transition was seamless, we had a number of preliminary steps we had to do on the back end. So the current ECL Watch was primarily using a web development framework called Dojo. And it provided a end-to-end development, including build environments and HTML templates and JavaScript libraries. So moving to the ECL Watch version 9, the first thing we did is we upgraded our build environment to Webpack, and this was completed back in HPCC 7. And that opened the door for us to start mix and matching extra and new JavaScript libraries. At the same time, we started migrating towards TypeScript. We then started using NPM packages, which is third-party packages. We could do this now quite easily with the Webpack support. We started to move our communications layer out to the HPCC JS comms layer, which is a JavaScript library to help calling the ESP functions. And it's a common API that is not just used by ECL Watch, but is also used by the ECL Extension in VS Code. So having a common API library is quite useful in that scenario. At the time, we needed to work out what our new framework was going to be. Angular, React, and Vue were the popular choices. We chose React, and then we had a couple of different frameworks that we needed to decide on. And we went with Fluent UI, which is a Microsoft developed one, and is what is used in Office 365 and in Microsoft Teams. We did some preliminary work where we were able to host a Dojo widget within a React component. And so with that under our belt, we were able to start porting the existing UI to React and to the Fluent UI. One of the end goals is to retire all our ES5 code, which is kind of still the old JavaScript format, and have all our new code using modern JavaScript and ESM style modules. Now, some of the key features for ECL Watch. It's very important that we maintained muscle memory. So by design, everything is roughly in the same place as it was in the current ECL Watch to the new ECL Watch. Now, for example, I'll have to move this out of the way. So, for example, if we look at the current ECL Watch, we had our activities button, which was up here, and our ECL button, our files button, our published queries, and our operations. In the new version 9 ECL Watch, we have the same, they've just been moved down to the left. So again, we have our activities, we have our ECL, we have our files, and so forth. The operations button here is slightly unusual insofar as what you will see underneath that will depend on whether you're running in the cloud or whether you're running on bare metal. Today, this demo server, which I just built this morning, so it's the latest and greatest, is running on our bare metal on my laptop here. So the operations here will look familiar as it's the same as the current ECL Watch. But if we were on a cloud environment, we would have a subtly different set of tabs here. Switching to the next key feature, and this is going to be one of the main things that we're going to encourage people to unlearn from the old ECL Watch, and that is that, oops, That is that the address bar is now honest. And what we mean by that is that the address bar, you can cut and paste it, you can bookmark it, you can stick it in an email, and it'll always open to that page on the other environment. So if I can move my Zoom meetings in the way here, I'll just move this down a little bit so we can see the address bar better, or so I can see it better. So what we mean by that is we're looking at the work units tab and it says work units here. But if I typed in files, it's going to switch me over to the files view. And it doesn't matter where you are in the environment, you will see that this URL is an honest representation of the page you're actually on. And that basically means that you can bookmark it in your favorites, etc. Next, the next feature, which is really a follow-on from the address bar being honest and telling the truth, is now that forward and back buttons work as advertised. And in the previous version of ECL Watch, you'll know that it was encouraged that you shouldn't press the forward and back button because you didn't get reliable results. And that had mostly to do with the... Well, this may seem like a very basic web feature. It is one that has... Beg your pardon, is this an extra slide should be there? But just to demonstrate that, we can see if I start clicking the back button here, it'll go back to the pages that I was just demonstrating. And likewise, if I go forward, I can go back to the pages I was already on. We also persist some extra information in there. So for example, if I was on the work units page, and if I had sorted by total cluster time, and then if I went over to look at my files, if I go back to the work units, it'll be the work units view, that the default view. But if I click the back button, you will see that it's actually gone back to the work units page, but it's maintained the sort order here. And if you look inside the address bar, again, it's being honest, and it's showing you that that selection is there. And again, this means that you can copy that address bar and send it on to somebody. Or maybe you've applied a filter. Better go with SOAR here. And this filtered view is also preserved within the URL address up here. So again, I could send that on to somebody in an email address. And again, just to bring home the point, pressing back, I've preserved my sort order on total cluster time. Back again, we're back to the default. And then going forward, we can see that it's preserved the filtered view that we had. Now, the next feature is that the UI is flatter. So comparing this to the current ECL Watch, when you click on a work unit, it would have opened a new tab for that work unit. We no longer open new tabs and have them available along here, which we would have had in the current ECL Watch. But if you do want that type of functionality, because not only is the address bar honest, but every hyperlink within this in version 9 ECL Watch, it's a real hyperlink. So I can right click on that and I can say open link a new tab, and it's going to behave like a regular ECL Watch, like a regular web page would. So you can still build up your tabbed views if that's what you want to do. And in fact, if you happen to select a couple of work units and then click open, it's going to go ahead and open those in new tabs. And again, the forward and back buttons are working as expected. So the key thing to remember here is that no matter where the hyperlink is, you can right-click on it and you can open them up in a new tab, in a new window instance. You can copy the link, you can save the link, you can add it to your bookmarks, and so forth. To that end, we do have a little extra history view here, which will show you the last 10 pages you've been to, which can be quite useful if you want to go back to a page you were just at. And on top of that, you can actually mark pages as a favorite. So maybe I want to reference this page later on in the demo. So I would star that and it will be there. And you can see it's just, all it does is it remembers the URL that we happen to be on. And then finally, oops, spoiler, the future is bright. That was a remark that the ECL Watch also supports a new dark mode, which is something a lot of people have always been asking for. We do have a theme editor, an experimental theme editor in the works, which will allow you to create your own palettes of both dark and light modes, should you wish. So rather than going through the entire ECL Watch, showing you each page one at a time, given that they are pretty much the same as the old ECL Watches from a muscle memory point of view, or from where things are point of view, I was going to just go through and highlight a few features that may be more different or may be new compared to the current ECL Watch. So one of the things I'd like to show is that this little breadcrumb up here, depending on what you're looking at, will get longer. So if I'm looking at the CPP file that was generated there, you can see that it's the CPP file from the helpers tab for this work unit. And again, that is represented up here in the address bar. You are able to click on any of these, so I can go right back to the summary page for ECL Watch. And again, I could go back to there if I wanted to, if I didn't mean to do that. So folks are going to have a lot of unlearning to do with regards to using the back button, the forward button, and opening new tabs. One thing you may have noticed is that the graphs tab is gone and has been replaced with the metrics tab. So metrics is a relatively new addition to the platform, whereby the developers have been going through, the HPCC platform developers have been going through and identifying metrics that may be of interest to the ECL developers. And they have added those in a consistent way, so they will have consistent units and can be logged consistently. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a look at that tab, but I want to find a work unit that has got a little bit bigger. So this is one that took 25 seconds from our regression test. And if I look at the metrics here, this is what the new page looks like. It's not too dissimilar to the old graphs, insofar as we have the timeline up here that you can drag and zoom in and out. It still filters the main metrics list or the graph list like it did on the current ECL Watch page. So if I click on SG26, it's limited this list to everything that is in SG26. But for now, it's taking up some valuable real estate, so I can turn that off. All the metrics are shown in this list here. based on the options that have been nominated. So the defaults are really all to do with the graph, because it tends to be the primary tool that ECL folks use to ensure that their jobs are running optimally. But to give you an idea of what some of these metrics are, this would be the full list of the known metrics at the moment. And selecting them will add them as columns within the main page. So if I pick on, for example, start time and time total, and I'll click OK there, and they will now show up here. And if there are any recorded metrics, which there aren't, you could sort on them. You get a freeform filter, which will filter not only on what you see in the list, but also on the properties. So I could filter on, for example, sort. And each one of these activities will have reference to sort in some shape or another. So this is actually a sort. And this merge will have a sort mention in here. So it's in there sorted and so forth. Selecting items in this metrics view, and I'm going to just make the screen a bit bigger again. We'll select them within the graph, and the opposite is true. If I click on an activity here, it will select it in this list. But one of the things that mightn't be apparent is that you can multi-select. And this can be quite useful if you wanted to find all the items that are a spill, maybe. So if I start multi-selecting, you will see that here's a spill, 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 filter projected spill, and so forth. And it'll keep adjusting the graph to ensure that the selection is always visible. The properties shown here are basically the properties for the item that has been selected. So if I select this spill right and this filter projected, and I scroll through the properties, you can see it for both. But we also have this crosstab view, and it's showing the same information, except for now the properties are along the top and the selected activities are listed here. So if I went and selected some, and the idea there is that you could start comparing certain values across similar items, maybe. This layout that I'm using at the moment is completely configurable as well. So maybe you've got a nice big monitor. So what you might want to do is grab the crosstabs and drag it and drop it down here. And that might be a preferable view for you. Then finally, just one more note on the graph control. This is now using a WASM built C++ layout engine for the layout, which is noticeably more performant than the previous versions, and hopefully it'll be easier to navigate with that. So I will drop back to normal view. I've spoken about the ones. Oh yeah, and then probably a good place to leave it will be just to mention that the existing ECL Watch is still available by deselecting the new default ECL Watch version 9, and it will bring you back to the current ECL Watch, and that will be available for the next while. But be warned that the new features, especially for the cloud stuff, will really only be available within ECL Watch version 9. So I'm not sure if, Bob, if we want to take some questions now.
Well, Gordon, I had a question. Thank you. What good presentation. Back in the metrics area, there's a number of properties. And one of the biggest queries I've had from the ECL developers is maybe further explanation of some of those properties, what they actually mean, how important are those properties to them. And are there plans for maybe enhanced documentation in the ECL Watch PDF? Is that maybe a JIRA that is currently ongoing? And then can the developers post additional JIRAs if they have a question about any particular property in this metrics area?
Absolutely. I mean, we always encourage more JIRAs than less, because it does make our life easier, believe it or not. Especially if we can see patterns of, similar questions coming up regularly, because it means we're not exposing something that people are expecting. I believe, well, with the metrics, there's a couple of things that will help understand them. They have a very consistent naming convention, is the first one. So you can see, if you look at this one, it starts with what the measurement is: time, size, a number. The next will be whether it's an average or a min or a max, and then it'll be what it is. In this case, it's a local execute. So this is the average local execute time for that activity. I would like to think a lot of the metrics are self-evident, like the number of disk writes and the average disk writes, of course, the nodes. But there is, I believe there is some work in talking about the metrics, and I believe there is some work in progress about documenting what they are and which ones are good ones to use when trying to debug a query, or trying to find where the choke points are. Now, it's not enabled here, but there is also a hotspots action up here, where a heuristic will present a list of the activities that are probably the hotspots for your entire job. In other words, they're the ones that are taking the longest time per row type of metric. But yes, if anyone has any questions to do with the metrics, please do ask them. And I'm just taking a note to make sure that we do have them documented somewhere in the future.
Great, Gordon. We do have a question from CapelDev. He was asking about where's the skew. Remember, we used to have the skew embedded in the graphs. Have they gone away, or where are they located now?
Nope, the skews are still there. Because I'm running on a one node environment, you don't get any skews.
All right. So
and again, I'm running this platform. It's just running on my laptop here, so it's only a one node setup. If it was a multi-node setup, the skews would be shown in the same places. Yeah. So if they were there, they'll be embedded on the graph as they always were. All right. Yes. Good. And not only that, they're showing up in more locations now. For example, on the logical file view, you will now see there's a min and max queue visible for each logical file. And I think they've been added to some other places. I know they're here, but I think they were always here, the min and max queue. So
well, that's interesting, because I was going to say that's interesting because we're looking at the file list there. So you're actually talking about the skew on disk?
Yeah, I mean, the skew represents how balanced a file is across all the nodes within an environment. So having partitioned your file into 400 ways, if you had done an output on last name Smith, and your file happened to be sorted on last name, there's a very good chance that all the Smiths ends up on node number 80, 81, and 82 maybe. And that is what leads to very high skews. So being able to see your skews on the list of logical files is actually quite useful, especially if those logical files are being used as inputs to other jobs.
All right, Gordon, some guy named Jim DeFavia, I don't know if you recognize that name or not. He said he showed how to drag and drop panels in metrics view. How do I reset them to the defaults if I mess it up?
Great question, Jim, troublemaker. Let me see if I can go back to my metrics. So I'm going to go back to one of my metrics views in my history, and this is the one where I'd selected 3 of them. So the forward and back buttons actually work within the graph as well. So if I was to select a few here in sequence and jump around the place, I can go back to my previous view. But to Jim's question, there is a layout. You can save layouts, and this is what the serialization looks like for the layouts. And there's this defaults button here, and the defaults button will reset everything back. So if I take the example I did earlier, oops, and maybe move this on top of the graph like that. If I do get to a position where I don't like it, we can, no, snap back there. You can, anyway, you can come in here, hit the defaults, which will erase what the current one is and bring you back to what the default is.
All right, looks good, Gordon. Thank you for that. Let's see, I'm just going to check the chat, see if there's any other questions coming up. Jim said thank you. Well, I think that's it as far as the chat questions right now. How do I clear errors and warnings? From Mr. Attila Vamos.
The errors and warnings show up here. Now, going forward, there are currently in the current ECL Watch, the errors and warnings you see in this list are the ones that have happened during your browsing session. So maybe you had clicked on a work unit details for a work unit that had just been deleted and no longer exists on the platform. That would have returned an ESP error, and that error would have gone into this list here. But from version 9 moving forward, there are a bunch of new errors and warnings that are going to show up here. And they are to do with things like maybe you have taken the default Helm chart and you're just using that default one and you've pushed it to a cloud environment. Now that's not an optimal setup maybe. So when you open up the ECL Watch, you will see warnings and errors that maybe your environment is not being configured 100% correctly. Those errors will not be able, you will not be able to erase them or clear them in the same way that we could previously. Just by refreshing the page, they will be persistent. And going forward, the plan there is to mark them as unread and read, but you will never have the ability to clear them completely. And further to that, we will also be taking certain log items that we consider to be important events. For example, a disk full error from the log. And we will be promoting those to this page as well as a unclearable error or warning. And the idea is that if you had an unexpected failure running your job, and you look in here, you may see that it coincided with a disk full, or maybe it's running slow, but maybe it coincided with a different warning saying that a node was out of memory or something. So you are going to see new warnings and errors here that are not based on your local browsing pattern or history. You will see errors and warnings about the environment as a whole.
All right, thanks, Gordon. One more question came in. In the work unit, we don't see sprayed logical files displayed in the output tab. Is this because it is created as part of the DFU work unit? And I think that's a yes.
Yes, in this work unit view, you wouldn't see that. Under the files, there's another work units tab here, which is, these are the jobs which are created during the spray operation. So when you spray something using DFU or despray or copy a file, it creates a work unit, but it's a D, it has a prefix of a D, and those work units show up here. I would demonstrate that, but I'm pretty sure the OneNode environment doesn't like despraying.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Jessica just pointed me out. Don Lingle had a question too that was sandwiched in between the other ones, and so I just saw it. He says, is the time local execute column still calculated the same?
Yes, I believe so. But there is a good chance there are extra metrics associated with that activity. For example, a start time and an end time. And they may not all correlate depending on what on how the platform has been configured and whether or not there's multi-channels or if there's multi-jobs interleaving with each other. So it's quite a common question where my work unit time, if you add up all the activities, was only 5 minutes, but the overall work unit time was 10 minutes. And why is that? It's because as each subgraph completes, there's a window of opportunity for someone else's job to get control of the Thor and execute part of their subgraph if the environment's been configured that way. Hope that answers that question.
Yep, I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. Also, a follow-up from Don Lingle. He said, this is when you were showing the warnings and errors dialogue there, or the page, he said, does this mean we can potentially log memory limit exceeded errors from Roxy log into this area you just mentioned? He said he'll inquire more offline if this doesn't make sense.
It potentially is exactly the type of thing that might end up there. From my point of view, it'll be whatever's been nominated on the server side as being a useful event or an event that we think users should know about. And if that's something that you would consider good to know, then yeah, open a Jira with it in. We haven't implemented any as of yet, but it's certainly it's part of the spec going forward that's what we will be doing, is exactly that. Cherry picking, like I say, key events from the logs that users would be interested in without having them to dig into the logs to see what was going on.
I think the big takeaway for me is don't be afraid to use the Jira. And if you don't know where it is, if you go to the HPCC portal and you go into the contribute to the community, and there is a link there that says community issue tracker. You can get right in there and then just log it as your favorite in your browser, because these guys are good and this is their go-to place where they go to for any issues or any suggestions for the platform to make it better. And anything that may need clarification as far as documentation, also there too. I'm always hearing from Jim and his team if there's an issue that needs documenting, please mark it in Jira. That's where they go. That's where they keep track. All right. Can we still see ECL attributes used for that work unit job to run? I guess maybe it's referring to WS attributes. I think that's still available.
Well, WS attributes, if that is what we are referring to, has been deprecated quite a while now, but we do still support it for some environments. It certainly, how long that goes on, I think, is more a question between the stakeholders and the environments that are still using it and the platform team. On this environment I'm on today, it's not enabled. And it certainly wouldn't be the, if you were starting up a new repository, it wouldn't be the go-to for storing the ECL. Using a regular Git repository with the ECL on your hard drive is the preferred way to go.
All right. Anyone have any other questions regarding anything Gordon was showing or anything he didn't show? Did I hear somebody on audio, or just pop your question in the chat if you want to? All right. So, of course, yeah, reach out to us. Again, reach out to us in Jira if there's anything in the new ECL Watch version 9 that maybe we didn't cover and you run into something and have a question about it. Actually, you could just email me directly too, and I'll contact the members of the development team appropriately. And if it's something that needs to be logged into a Jira, we'll go ahead and do that. All right, Gordon, thank you. I guess if you want to put the last couple of slides on, let me wrap up our tech talk with just our conclusion here. So yeah, here's just as you all know, we offer training classes for ECL. There's some classes coming up in May, the first week in May, May 1st, and then May 16th for the advanced class. So again, you all know about these slides and training and support. So check out our courses. And then the last slide here, I think we have one more. Yeah, this is something that's close to my heart, something that Trish McCall is a big part of, and other folks on the HPCC team, the ADAM program. Once again, if you haven't signed up for the ADAM program, please grab this QR code that's on the slide and visit the webpage and sign up for it so that you can get alerts in your area to missing children. Of course, time is of the essence when a child comes missing. We've had some great results of the ADAM program. We're very proud of that. And this is something that we are working with HPCC Systems and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So please check this out. Check out the QR code. That's the one plug that we have for this. It's for a good cause to find these children that are missing. So thank you all for going out there and signing up. And I think that's the last slide, right, Gordon?
I believe so. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to wrap up here. That is our Tech Talk. Gordon, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for attending live. And this recording will be made available as soon as possible. We know your time is valuable, and we hope that the time spent was edifying to jumping into the new ECL Watch. And I hope that you have some fun with it. I'm going to be now, I'm kind of, what's the word here? I'm kind of motivated now to start using it more in my training classes. So you'll find me jumping more to version 9 now that I know a lot more about some of the areas that I was curious about. So, all right, everyone, that's all I have. And thank you for joining. And we will, oh, by the way, also one more thing, October 2nd, our community summit week. So save the date. There'll be some announcements. There'll be some web releases, short web page releases shortly, links and everything else. But just for now, mark the date, October 2nd, for our community summit. And that's all I have. Thanks everyone for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week and be safe out there. Thank you.